The nursery had taken me 4 months to perfect. Every weekend of my third trimester, I'd driven the 40 minutes from my apartment to my parents' house, paintbrush in hand, determined to create something beautiful in my childhood bedroom. Soft lavender walls with hand-painted butterflies, a white crib I'd saved for since the day I saw that positive test, and a rocking chair where my grandmother had once sung me to sleep. I'd moved back home at 7 months pregnant when my landlord sold the building. Just until I get back on my feet, I'd promised my parents. They'd agreed, grudgingly, reminding me that at 28, I should have my life together. My brother Ethan, 31 and unemployed, had been living in their basement for 5 years, but somehow that was different. Now, 3 weeks postpartum, I stood in the doorway of what had been my daughter Sophie's nursery, my C-section incision still tender, watching a stranger direct my father on where to position furniture. The crib should go by the window, Brittany commanded, her bleached blonde hair piled high, her hand resting on a belly that barely showed at 4 months. And that ugly purple has got to go. We're thinking blue for our little prince. My mother appeared behind me, not even trying to look apologetic. Oh good, you're up. We need you to move your things out today. Move my things? I shifted Sophie in my arms, her tiny weight still feeling surreal. This is her nursery, we live here. Not anymore, Dad said, not even looking up from the crib he was dismantling. The crib I'd spent 8 hours assembling while 9 months pregnant because he'd been too busy watching football. Brittany's moving in. She's carrying our grandson. I'm holding your granddaughter, I said, my voice shaking. He finally looked at me then, his expression dismissive. Boys matter more, Veronica. They carry on the family name. Your daughter is sweet, but a boy? That's a legacy. I felt like I'd been slapped. Sophie stirred against my chest, making those little newborn sounds that still made my heart clench. 3 weeks old. She was 3 weeks old and already being told she mattered less. Where are we supposed to go? I asked numbly. Brittany laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. Not our problem. Maybe you should have thought about that before getting knocked up by some loser who wouldn't even stick around. She was talking about David, who died in Afghanistan 2 months after I told him I was pregnant. We'd been planning to marry when he got back, but explaining that to people who'd already decided my story seemed pointless. You have an hour, Mom said briskly. Brittany has a doctor's appointment at 2, and she needs to rest after. An hour? My voice cracked. I just had major surgery. I can't even lift anything over 10 pounds. Where am I supposed to? There's a women's shelter downtown, Brittany offered with a fake smile. They take single moms. Ethan appeared then, wearing the same ratty bathrobe he'd had since college. Britt's right, sis. You need to learn to stand on your own feet. Can't mooch off Mom and Dad forever. The irony of that statement, coming from a man who hadn't paid rent in half a decade, should have been funny. Instead, it just hurt. I looked around the nursery one more time. At the growth chart, I'd already started marking, even though Sophie wouldn't stand for months. At the butterfly mobile I'd special ordered from an artist in Vermont. At the basket of books I'd been reading to her every night, convinced she could hear my voice and know she was loved. I need help packing, I said quietly. I can't lift. Figure it out, Dad said, already carrying the crib frame toward the door. We've got work to do here. They left me standing there, holding my daughter in a room that was being erased as if we'd never existed. I called my best friend Marissa with shaking hands. She arrived in 20 minutes with her husband Connor and a rage that could have powered a small city. They're doing what? She shrieked, then immediately lowered her voice when Sophie fussed. Sorry, sweet girl. Auntie Marissa's just planning your grandparents' murders. It's fine, I lied, throwing clothes into garbage bags because my parents hadn't even given me boxes. I'll figure something out. Connor was already loading Sophie's bouncer into their truck. You'll stay with us. No arguments. I can't impose. Shut up, Marissa said firmly. You're not imposing. You're surviving. As we packed, I could hear Brittany in the next room, complaining about the baby smell and demanding my mother hire professional cleaners. My mother, who'd never once offered to help with Sophie's laundry or midnight feedings, was promising her a cleaning service and interior decorator. I found myself in the kitchen, grabbing Sophie's formula, the special kind for her sensitive stomach that cost $30 a can. Mom appeared, hand out. That's expensive formula. Brittany might need it. I stared at her. Brittany's baby won't be born for 5 months. This expires in 3 weeks. Still, boys eat more. We should stock up. That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped into place, like a bone being reset. No, I said calmly, tucking the formula into the diaper bag. Excuse me? I said no, this is my daughter's formula, purchased with my money, for my living, breathing child. Not for Brittany's theoretical prince. Mom's face flushed. Don't be selfish, Veronica. Family helps family. Really? I laughed, but it came out cold. Where was family when I was up for 72 hours straight because Sophie had colic? Where was family when I couldn't shower for a week because I couldn't put her down? Where was family when I sobbed in the emergency room, terrified something was wrong, completely alone? You chose to have a baby without a father. He died. I screamed and Sophie started crying. I bounced her gently, lowering my voice. He died serving our country. He never got to meet her. He never got to see this nursery I built for our daughter, and you're giving it away because she's just a girl. Dad appeared in the doorway. Keep your voice down. You're upsetting Brittany. I'm being thrown out with a 3-week-old baby, and you're worried about upsetting the woman stealing my daughter's room. No one's stealing anything, he said firmly. This is our house. We decide who lives here. Our house. There it was. The weapon they'd always held over my head. Their house, their rules, their favoritism toward their do-nothing son and whatever woman he happened to drag home. You're right, I said quietly. It is your house. Something in my tone must have worried him because his eyes narrowed. Don't do anything stupid, Veronica. I smiled. It felt like armor clicking into place. Wouldn't dream of it. They had no idea what was coming next. Marissa and Connor's guest room was small but clean, and they'd somehow managed to fit Sophie's crib in the corner. That first night, as I sat nursing her while Marissa made us tea, I told them everything. I'm going to bury them, Marissa said flatly. Legally, emotionally, financially. Total scorched earth. How? I asked tiredly. They're right, it is their house. Connor, who worked in real estate law, looked thoughtful. Maybe, maybe not. Tell me about your grandmother again. Your dad's mom. She passed when I was 15, left the house to Dad. Did you ever see the will? I shook my head. Why? Just curious. I've seen a lot of inheritance cases where things aren't as clear-cut as they seem. I filed that away, too exhausted to think about it. But over the next weeks, as I slowly healed and found my rhythm with Sophie, Connor's words kept echoing. Meanwhile, my family's cruelty continued via text. Pictures of the nursery being painted navy blue. Updates about Brittany's appointments, always scheduled during what had been Sophie's feeding times, as if to prove they'd never accommodated us. Mom sent an invoice for utilities used during your stay, dated from when I moved back home. They're charging you rent retroactively. Marissa was incredulous. While you were pregnant. $500 a month, I confirmed. Plus utilities, says I have 30 days to pay or they'll take legal action. That's when I decided to do some legal research of my own. The courthouse records were dusty but digitized. I started with property records, working backwards. The house had indeed been Grandma Rose's, purchased with Grandpa before he died young. She'd lived there alone for 40 years, Dad moving back in to care for her in her final year. Then I found the will. My hands shook as I read it. Connor had been right. Things weren't clear-cut at all. The house hadn't been left to Dad. It had been left in trust for all biological grandchildren of Rose Marie Harrison in equal shares, to be administered by Peter Harrison until the youngest grandchild reaches age 25. All biological grandchildren, equal shares. I was a biological grandchild. So was Ethan. So was Sophie. Dad wasn't the owner. He was the trustee. And he'd been living in, and now giving away rooms in, a house that was 1/3 mine and 1/3 my daughter's. But it got better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. The trust had very specific provisions. The trustee could live in the house while administering it, but couldn't make major changes without beneficiary consent, couldn't charge rent to beneficiaries, and absolutely couldn't favor one beneficiary over another. Every rent payment I'd made, every time they'd helped Ethan while denying me support, every renovation they'd done for him while refusing to fix my broken window, it was all carefully documented. I brought everything to a lawyer, not Connor, who wisely suggested I find someone neutral. Patricia Winters specialized in trust litigation, and her eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. "This is serious," she said, regaining her composure. "There's a pattern here. We can take legal action." "Can we stop it?" She gave a confident smile. "We can do more than that." The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. I knew because Ethan texted a photo. "What is this?" It was a cease and desist, halting renovations on the trust property, demanding that my daughter's share of the inheritance be respected, and requesting a full accounting of trust disbursements for the past 13 years. Dad called. I didn't answer. Mom texted paragraphs about family and disappointment. I forwarded everything to Patricia. Brittany posted online claiming people were trying to tear others down. That too went into the file. The formal lawsuit was filed discreetly. Breach of fiduciary duty, mismanagement of funds, and misuse of property. The evidence showed that payments I'd made were from trust property, not personal contributions. Support had been selectively given. Documents confirmed the trust was intended to benefit all grandchildren equally. But the most revealing details came during discovery. There was evidence of personal and trust funds being mixed, expenses charged to the trust that didn't serve all beneficiaries. Meanwhile, my documented requests for school and baby supplies had been declined. "This meets the criteria for financial misconduct," Patricia said. "I don't want to ruin lives," I replied, holding Sophie. "I just want fairness." She nodded. "That's exactly what we're after." Court proceedings moved slowly, but social dynamics shifted fast. News spread and concern grew. Brittany eventually stepped away from the situation when questions arose. Ethan had to reconsider his plans when the trust funds were frozen. Mom, once proud of her community ties, stepped back from certain roles. But the moment that stayed with me, Sophie's first word wasn't mama or da, it was mine. She said it as we signed the settlement. The house would be sold, proceeds fairly divided, questionable trustee fees reviewed, back payments including rent returned with interest. It came to nearly $200,000 each. "Mine," Sophie declared, reaching for a pen. "That's right," I said. "Yours." Dad used to say boys carry on a legacy, but he misunderstood what legacy meant. It wasn't the name or the property, not favoritism disguised as tradition. The real legacy was Grandma Rose, who sewed for decades, raised a son alone, and left her home equally to her grandchildren, including a great-granddaughter she'd never meet, a girl some thought wouldn't matter. She mattered. She now had a college fund, a safe space. A mother who learned that family is about presence, not entitlement, about who shows up, who holds you, who fights for your future. The house went to a new family with twin girls. I drove past one day, Sophie chatting in her car seat, and saw them painting a nursery. Purple, with butterflies. "Look, Sophie," I said. "That used to be your room." She glanced, then turned back to her toy, already focused on the future. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom, asking to visit. I didn't reply. I drove home, to the apartment Connor and Marissa helped us find. I carried Sophie up the stairs myself. Her room here is smaller, but it's ours. Built with care, not resentment, filled with peace, not regret. That night, as I rocked her to sleep, I whispered the truth they tried to steal from her. "You matter, Sophie. You've always mattered. And anyone who says different." She sighed in her sleep, perfect and whole and worth everything I'd fought for. They have no idea what's coming next.